With that being said, Ntate Mbeki, I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of every single African child out there, and on behalf of future generations, to thank you. Thank you for being selfless. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you so much for believing in us as change agents and as the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you for reminding us to stand tall and be proud of our Africanness. Thank you for never deserting your promise to promote and protect the rights of all South Africans, no matter their race, their gender, or their religion. And most importantly, sir, I'd really like to thank you for fighting for our future. Thank you so, so much. We appreciate you, we celebrate you, we appreciate the commitment you've made, and we appreciate everything that you have done for us. We, as the youth of South Africa, accept the baton with pride, and we promise you to never stop working hard, never, and to never stop striving for the achievement of an African Renaissance. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you. I urge you to kick back and relax. Get ready to be entertained. If you need to start stretching for the dance floor, please do so. But I must warn you, I heard this is being broadcast live. Please keep that in mind when you attempt the for-show or Chukudibala. We cannot crop, we cannot edit, it's not possible. Thank you so, so much, and I wish you a beautiful evening further.
I think a new television star has been born, and I'm so glad that my good friend Basetsana is right here. There's talent right here. She's beautiful. She's got content. They don't come around that easily. Another big round of applause. Thank you. It may be confusing to a few as to exactly what it is that we're doing, even though we've been trying to explain since we started. So we're just going to take you on a very small journey that hopefully will just assist or help to crystallize the reason as to why we're all gathered this evening.
Here we go. This area is called Mbuli. It's a part of the Radical district. And the actual small area where I was born is called Kwateza. Because at the period it's a clan name. Kenza is a clan name. It's where most Kenza people live. So it's called like that, Kwateza. We arrived here in 1940, and everybody was quite well accepted. But then according, to the culture and the civilized standards, the place was backward.
According to the final result, ANC has polled 62% of the total votes that have been cast in this election. It is ironical for me to say, I feel big, that we did not get a two-thirds majority, because already tensions were building up that we were now going to write our own constitution. And yet, in that speech that I delivered at the culture, I made the point that we wanted to make the government of national unity something different from a hollow shell.
It is my honor and privilege as President of the Constitutional Court to invite you, Thabo Mbeki, to proceed to the microphone for the purpose of taking the prescribed oath of office.
Agency yatirwa emasisi ekuyamukhalana njakamu-president wa-republic ya-afrika buko mina Thabo Mbeki ngiyafunga ukuthi ngizothembeka ku-republic yeningizimu afrika futhi ngizohlonipha ilandele isekele futhi igcine umthetho-sisekelo kanye nayo yonke imithetho ye-republic. And I solemnly and sincerely promise that we will always promote all that will advance the republic and oppose all that may harm it. Protect and promote the rights of all South Africans. Discharge my duties with all my strength and talents to the best of my knowledge and ability, and true to the dictates of my conscience. En allemaal recht zal dat geschied en mij aan die welzijn van de Republiek en al zijn mensen zal willen.
Would you please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me.
Mr. President, would you be seated to sign the oath of office? That's fine, yeah. There we are. Okay.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That show took us back, at least those of us who were alive. Not too many in this room, given the fact that you all look considerably underage. In fact, we have to speed up the program because it is a school night, and we don't wish for any of you to be late tomorrow or to give this evening as an excuse for not having done your homework. When Mutlasi welcomed us, she made reference to one thing, and she kept on going back to it, and she said, "Thank you for fighting for our future." I'm now going to call upon a gentleman who's here to bear testimony for a future that has been fought for, a future that has in turn, or that he rather interprets or look at as the fruits of President Thabo Mbeki's labor. Ladies and gentlemen, from Timali, help me welcome Mr. Alan Tambo. Would be great if you could encourage Mr. Tambo with a round of applause. Thank you.
President Mbeki, Mrs. Mbeki, to your loved ones and family members, to all the dignitaries here present, the youth, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Thank you. My name is Alan Tumbo, as introduced, and I would like to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me here today to speak on why the youth of South Africa should be thankful to President Mbeki. But before I start, let me speak briefly on the extent to which I am youth. My age is equivalent to the time that President Mbeki spent outside of South Africa during apartheid. When President Mbeki was my age, he was still undergoing military training in Russia. And it actually met, or actually that was the Soviet Union. And on his birthday, which was almost 49 years ago, he had met with Chris Hani and other SACP leaders in Russia. I think it's safe to say that was a long time ago. But I think we can conclude two things from this. Firstly, that I'm youth, And secondly, just in case you're in denial, President Mbeki, you are now a seasoned person. I'm truly honored to be speaking here today about someone who I truly believe that despite the politics and the media and the public profile, is genuinely a good person. Now you might ask me how I know this. The great book speaks of how you shall know the righteous by the works of their hands. And I believe the works of these particular hands have been very fruitful to this continent. I'd like to speak about three main fruits that I believe that we as people and we particularly as youth should celebrate of your work, President Mbeki. The first of these is peace. One cannot doubt the fact that you have contributed immensely to peace not only in South Africa, but in Africa and the world. I think many people are aware of the immense work that you did in order for South Africa to have its freedom, and in order for the rest of the world to have a better understanding of the implications of their support of the apartheid regime. This cannot be taken lightly. On the continent, President Mbeki, you negotiated peace deals in Rwanda, Burundi, Ivory Coast, and Democratic Republic of Congo. And some of these youths are barely even aware of the fact that they have people like you to thank for their times of peace. Douglas MacArthur said, and I quote, "The soldier, above all others, prays for peace, for it is the soldier who must suffer and bear the deepest wounds and scars of war." I'm sure we as the public know very little of the wounds and suffering you experience as a result of your pursuit for peace. However, on behalf of the youth of Africa, I wish to thank you, President Mbeki, for the sacrifices you made in order for us to have peace in our countries. I also wish to thank you for playing a part in ensuring that this generation grows with the opportunity and with the prospects of a better future, and with a computer and a pen in their hands rather than a gun. But I don't want to stop there. Thomas Sankara, the former president of Burkina Faso, once said that women hold up the other half of the sky. So in this regard, I would like to thank and applaud your wife, Mrs. Mbeki, for the role that she played in holding up and keeping intact your sky, and indirectly ours. So the second fruit I'd like to speak about is prosperity. I believe that a great mark of a leader is stewardship, the ability of a leader to leave things better than how they found them. And I think as a steward of our nation, you brought us great prosperity as a people. As stated by Stats SA, and I quote, "If expenditure is taken as a measure of better times, there was a 3-year period between 2005 and 2008 when government spent less than it earned, enjoying a surplus over that period." Now that is something to celebrate, particularly considering where we are today. The unfortunate part is, though, many of us that are youth were too young to understand what the implications were, what a budget deficit is, what a budget surplus is. And I fear that not many of us do today, unfortunately. However, your government did bring us the FIFA World Cup, the biggest sporting event in the world. And this empowered and allowed our youth to engage with people from all over the world. But even more importantly, it allowed our youth to witness the returning of the entire world to the cradle of humankind. Now the third and final fruit I want to speak about, and possibly the most important, is enlightenment. For as long as I can remember, self-determination has been something that you fought for. The right and the freedom for African people to determine their own future in their own way and in their own terms. For a long time, Africans were so impaired as a result of our oppression that we didn't even believe in our own self-determination, and neither did the other races. Now this mindset is something which I truly believe you had a part in changing, not only in ourselves as Africans, but in others abroad. I mean, how many people here even knew what the term Renaissance meant? or even knew that we needed one as Africans in order to address the issues that we have. So I do believe you brought this to the fore, Mr. President, and we cannot thank you enough. When I attended Tamale in 2011, in the second year of Tamale, I first encountered the term decolonizing your mind. This, of course, wasn't a term that was original to Tamale, but Tamale was actively working to decolonize the minds of the students. And I was so moved by the entire process that in 2014 I insisted that my then girlfriend go and attend Tamale as well, to also partake in the decolonization. No, but here's the good parts. Here's the good parts. She's no longer a girlfriend. She's now a wife. Mrs. Deborah Tumbo. But even more so, she has since gone on to start her own business, Tumbo Scott, which is a black, female-owned law firm that aims to bring people closer to the law who couldn't afford it or couldn't have access to it. And through this entire process, President Mbeki, someone you know very well, Advocate Gumbi, has been important in mentoring her and mentoring her business. And I think the point of the story is that you've given us exposure to the type of people that can bring us to such places. But secondly, if you're in this room and you have not attended Tamale, I honestly encourage you to do so. Take the time, make the means possible so that you can decolonize your mind. Now, thank you. As a result of my now decolonized mind, I've personally taken it upon myself to spread the knowledge that I've gained about this continent with those that have no idea that there was once a country that was never colonized. Those that have never heard of a man called Mansa Musa, who brought the whole world to Mali because of his riches. Those who've never heard of Queen Zinga of Angola, who was respected for the way that she protected her people and fought against the Portuguese in Angola. Or those who don't even know about the remains that are left in the Great Zimbabwe that remind us of the exploits of the Shona people. These are some of the things that bring me great joy and excitement when I see that you will now have a library that will contain so much more information that I can gain from and that we as a youth can learn from and teach others. Now, for my closing, I would like to recite a passage that is very dear to my wife and I. It was written by Raul Koza and it is titled, "The African in My Dream." And I will paraphrase. I see an African who is a master of their destiny, an African who has a vision, an African who is known for what they stand for. I see an African who is a profoundly moral being, an African who has integrity, an African who is able and competent. I see an African who leads a renaissance, an African who takes responsibility for their actions, an African who builds the future. I see an African who looks in the mirror and sees the hand of God. Mr. President, on behalf of the youth, I'd like to thank you for being the African in the dreams of our ancestors and youth. And I'd like to thank you for setting a high standard for the youth of today and the youth of tomorrow to aspire to. Happy birthday, Mr. President. I thank you.
Ellen Tambo, ladies and gentlemen, ever so profound and eloquent, a deep understanding of what we are, where we're going, and where we're from. You would notice that I didn't go into the house rules. Who needs house rules when we're at the president's birthday party? Of course, everyone is going to be in their best behavior. Of course, everyone understands this is a fundraiser, and therefore, even when you feel the need to quench your thirst, you're obviously you understand that we can only but offer umdog or maybe ne-oros, but all those other things that you have gotten your expensive palate to be acquainted to, they should be coming from your damn pocket. We're not paying for that. We don't have that kind of money. In fact, we want your money so we can build the library. How about that? Talking of money and talking us trying to get as much as we can from the future that you're building for your children, we're going to be tossing this book around where we are trying to cajole you, or rather to plead with you, to pledge the support. Someone will come much earlier on, the Chief Executive Officer of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation will come a bit later, do pardon me, he will come a bit later to explain exactly what the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library is and what it intends to do and what it seeks to achieve. But in the meantime, for the purposes of being nice, the purposes of being generous, and the purposes of being progressive, this book is going to do the rounds, where you make your pledge and you sign. And we also hope that you shall honor that pledge. You know, blacks are very good at making pledges and they never honor them. I'm not selling out. White folk would find some excuse or the other, but they'll give you a little something. Blacks will just stop taking your calls. Behind me, ladies and gentlemen, once again, for the spirit of the night, we thought it opportune that we would go and dig and find musicians that speaks to this renaissance. Musicians that not only sing it, but live it. They've assembled themselves, fantastic musicians, if I may add, supremely gifted, and they go by the name of Connecting Generations. Let's give them a warm round of applause. generations, ladies and gentlemen. What an exquisite rendition of this African classic and evergreen. If one understands the South African music book, this is by far one of Africa's greatest compositions of all time. I think they deserve another round of applause. When Ellen was addressing us, it felt like an address. I think there's a politician in the making there too. If cabinet were looking to recruit, or if the political parties were recruiting, I would definitely grab him and make sure that I invest in him. He truly is sensational and exceptional, and he definitely is the future that we chose. One such young person who has benefited from the depth and the profoundness of President Thabo Mbeki as the speaker I'm about to call upon. Now let's not get things twisted. He's my boss at work, I work for him, pays my salary. So, which puts me in an awkward position. I therefore cannot afford, I don't have the liberty to be all elaborate in my introduction, lest I get accused of trying to negotiate or lobby for a price hike. Have to say though, I did get the job. My contract was renewed, so I don't have to play nice no more. Ladies and gentlemen, the member of the Executive Council for Human Settlements, Urban Planning. What's the third one? It's new, we've just started. I can't remember. Let's welcome MEC Lebogang Maile. Yes, Human Settlements, I got it.
No, it's Human Settlement, Urban Planning and Copter. You don't know where you work. I wonder if you go to work. Program Director, His Excellency President Thabo Mbeki, dignitaries, esteemed leaders from all over the continent and the world. I know, Comrade President, that we've got guests that are from other countries who are with us here today. We want to welcome them. But we also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge leaders of our movement and civil society from various generations, from different levels and different sectors who are here today. I also want to take this opportunity, Comrade President, because I'm not speaking on my behalf. I'm speaking on behalf of my comrades and colleagues in the Executive Council of Gauteng. 3 of them are with me here today. MEC Tasneem Mutara, can you please stand up? She's responsible for infrastructure in our province, young as she is. So I call them fellow young people in government. Then we've got Dr. Bandile Masuku, who's responsible for health in our province. Can you please stand up, Dr. Bandile Masuku? Then we've got Mbali Don Shope, Comrade President. She's responsible. There is she at the back. Mbali is responsible for sports, for arts, for culture, heritage, and libraries. That is why she's the last to be introduced. Because one of the things I'm going to do tonight is to commit on her behalf and on behalf of the provincial government that we will indeed support the library. And we've got the blessings of Premier Makura, President. So there is no problem. There is no problem. And we also want to acknowledge former ministers and deputy ministers. I've seen some of them here today. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. In his ethno-philosophical work, Bantu Philosophy, the Belgian missionary Father Placide Tempels present the following argument, which underguides the worldview that informed the colonial project. And I quote, "Let us not expect the first black in the street to give us a systematic account of his ontological system. Nevertheless, this ontology exists. It penetrates and informs all the primitive's thinking and dominates his behavior. Using the method of analysis and synthesis of our own intellectual disciplines, we can and therefore must do the primitive the service of looking for classifying and systematizing the elements of his ontological system," and I close quote. Program Director, over 500 years, Temple's outlook has dominated much of the European mindset about the African, perceived and portrayed as uncivilized, incapable of self-reflection and self-definition. The view that has stubbornly held that, like a child in need of its parent, the African was forever in need of the Westerner to free him from this primitive. Another and similar example is that of Daniel Defoe's character Friday in the novel Robinson Crusoe. With its dehumanizing and contemptuous view of the African, the colonial necessitated Africa's struggle for liberation. As Africans, we sought and still seek to counter Temple's false narrative by asserting ourselves as dignified beings with a worthy collective history that has contributed immensely to human progress. Through their intellectual work and writings, African luminaries such as Presidents Leopold Senghor, Sekou Touré, Kwame Nkrumah, Mwalumi, Julius Nyerere, and Thabo Mbeki, amongst many others, have played a critical role in advancing this important and necessary struggle for African liberation. This has provided a good basis for the advancement of African Renaissance. We are immensely proud of such eminent leaders of our people as Presidents Thabo Mbeki, Benjamin Mkapa, Olusegun Obasanjo, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, the late Ethiopian Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, and may his soul rest in peace, for taking the front ranks in advancing the process of Africa's rebirth in recent times. As for President Thabo Mbeki, this pursuit that has characterized his life, political activism, for much of the 77 years we are celebrating tonight, his political and intellectual leadership has struggled across many significant historical milestones in our country, the continent, and the world. We refer here to such milestones as the decision by our movement, the African National Congress, to negotiate with the apartheid regime, the construction of the post-apartheid state, and our reintroduction to the rest of the world, the formation of the African Union, the new Partnership for Africa's Development with its African peer review mechanism, the painstaking process to end many of the conflicts of our continent, the establishment of the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute, as well as the initiative, we are launching tonight the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library. And one of the things I did not say when I introduced my colleagues is that they didn't just come here today. They also mobilized young business people to buy tables as part of our contribution toward this library. And because we believe in this noble cause, we will continue beyond the public purse to mobilize more and more young people to contribute towards this noble cause. Thus, President Thabo Mbeki's entire life has been dedicated to the African struggle to reclaim Africa's dignity and rightful place in the ordering of human affairs. Not the least important of this is the struggle to change the narrative and assert our right to frame and shape the knowledge production process from our own perspective. We hope and trust that the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library continue to build on this proud tradition of distinguished intellectual output, thus to sustain the impetus to reclaim Africa's dignity and contribute to human progress. In the words of the brilliant African philosopher Pauline J. Hondonji, we want to see and I want to quote, reappropriation of Africa's own endogenous knowledge and beyond, a critical appropriation of the very process of knowledge production and capitalization. And I close quote. This will create a proper counter-narrative to current development outlooks on Africa, which are underpinned by the hegemonic Eurocentric forms of knowledge production, which often marginalize, undermine, dismiss, and exclude African traditions. In the furtherance of the spirit of democracy within the continent, a theme that has also defined so much of President Mbeki's political journey, this library must also contribute towards the democratization of the knowledge production process, from an elite pursuit towards local communities participating meaningfully in the generation of knowledge that is concerned with the development in line with the sentiments expressed by character. Those who know Shakespeare's or who have read Shakespeare's, the character in Sicinius in Act 3, Scene 1 of Shakespeare, Comrade President. And I think you know it better than all of us. And so through initiatives such as this, I've made that point, I'm actually about to conclude, Comrade President. So in conclusion, Comrade President, a library of this magnitude is a befitting ode to your great legacy, your gigantic intellectual contribution, and lifelong love for knowledge, evidenced by the fact that even in your younger days, working at the family store in rural Eastern Cape, you were already interacting with the serious literature. So, Comrade President, may we, as the generations that follow after you, imbibe in knowledge to contribute towards the betterment of people's lives as we learned from you and your generation. May the words of the poet William Wordsworth, yes, words is words and worth, so it's combined. So these are words and worth. So Wordsworth. So William Wordsworth, his words rings true as we seek to follow your example. And I want to quote Comrade President. What we have loved others will laugh. And we will teach them how, instruct them how the mind of man becomes 1,000 times more beautiful than the earth on which he dwells. And I close quote. With those few words, Comrade President, happy birthday, Siyabulela Zizi Chama Kasjadu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MEC Lebogang Maile, for such profound words. I'm a bit shaken, however, as it seems that my professional career, not political, my professional career is in jeopardy. So, Mama Zanel, because I've been told by Bramex that as MEC Lebogang Maile has alluded, this is just the beginning. We are planning a roadshow for these fundraisers. They're going to come in different forms, of course, depending on where we are. Our next one is in Cape Town. And if I'm not mistaken, from Cape Town, we should be going to Nigeria, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. And stuff like that, etc., etc., etc. How is my special precious book doing? It's doing the rounds, and it's collecting numbers, right? It's not just doing a rounds, landing in a table, and being marveled at, and then being tossed on to the next person without any interaction with the book. So the whole idea is you get the book, you take the pen, and you write, and you commit. That's what we're doing, right? That's what's going on. Am I correct in assuming that's what's going on around here? Am I correct in assuming that by the time we leave tonight, we're going to leave with at least minimum 5 million rands, perhaps? That's not too much to ask for. I mean, if I scout in the room here and if I want me to expose you, I'll expose you. I'll tell you which car you're driving and how many you have. Surely you can sacrifice one for this noble cause. At least this is an asset that will never depreciate. Think about it. I'm now going to call upon a man whom I've come to appreciate as by far one of the bravest chief executive officers I've ever met. I'm on Twitter, and I see that there is a mention about the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library. It is a Sunday, and hope my boss is not listening. Luckily that Sunday I had not really interacted that much with my champagne, so we were quite good. I see this tweet and I immediately call Sia and I say, Sia, I think this is something that we would like to get involved in. I do not know how, but can you please just take me through? Sia, being ever so supportive and ever so eager, in the good sense, that is. He says, fine, if your time allows, you can come and see us the day after. I speak to a colleague of mine whom you're going to meet later on, who is passionate, who so happens to share the same passions as President Mbeki. And I say to him, Chief, I have just committed to this thing. I do not know what it is. I do not know what the expectations are. I do not know what the foundation is going to ask of us. All I know is that we must get involved. He agrees. We get to the foundation and we meet up with Sia, and Sia explains. And now we're getting all excited, and now we know exactly what we're going to do. Sia so happens to remind us that June is President Mbeki's birthday, and it's the 18th. And this is now roughly run about 2.5, if not 2.5 weeks, or if not 3 weeks, to the actual celebration. I look at my friend and I say, okay, cool, great, then we're going to host the birthday dinner. I look at Bramex and I say, no, don't worry, I can see, I know the look. I know that many people probably approach the foundation and they offer, and they say, no, we'll pay for it. Didn't know how we were going to pay for it, but a commitment was made. But Bramex was brave enough to say, I trust you gentlemen, and I know you gentlemen are going to do it. Hence, this evening I refer to him as the bravest I've ever met. Ladies and gentlemen, to tell us more about the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library, CEO of Thabo Mbeki Foundation, Max Bokwala.
That chap that says I'm reckless has no money. And he's one of the gate crashers here. And indeed, Lupi, it was a lot, Chief, to entrust all of this thing to you. But thank you very much for taking us up to this point. I read the Citizen newspaper during last week, and it says President Mbeki's birthday gala dinner, only 7,500. A chair. You know, Mohale there, Ralibito, and Kuseli Fagu, and maybe Caroline Stein, those are the people that say only. And people like that chap Bonakele that's talking there in the corner are the people that I don't know how they got here. Because they were the ones, but this is exclusionary. I said, but it was not meant for you. We know people that we wanted to be here. Lupi, I'm not attempting any of these hegemonic, dialectical, William Wordsworth things that the boss spoke about. Me, I'm not qualified for that. But President Mbeki, happy birthday and many positive returns, Chief. And not trials and tribulations that normally happens to people above the age of 70, as the good book will say. Mrs. Mbeki, thank you again for your generosity of spirit and for being a mother to many of us. There's a lot in this house that are your children. And Mrs. Maile, thank you very much, Chief, for the act of solidarity that you have demonstrated that we have not seen in the foundation for a very long time. And we appreciate all the other trustees that you have come with, those that have accepted the responsibility to manage the national and provincial affairs on our behalf. To all my bosses, the trustees of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, and most importantly, the person that from the university that has traveled with us in this journey of 10 years of the formation of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, Professor Mandla Makanya. Honored guests, friends, and colleagues. As you can imagine, it's always a very complex business to think through how to celebrate President Mbeki's birthday. Firstly, he himself thinks that it is not necessary. And every time you raise this thing, he tells us that there are enormous challenges on which we need to focus our energies and resources. As a result of this, it is interesting that every time we approach President Mbeki's birthday, we have to find more creative ways to celebrate with him. And when I look back at those creative ways, some of them have had lasting positive results. When President Mbeki turned 70, he said, you need to do a colloquium and say, what lessons have you learned from me whilst I was a political activist and a leader of this country and this continent? As a result of that, we produced a book, which I think is a very important book for greater understanding of our continent, that was edited by Professor Pityana, The Building Blocks of Africa's Renaissance. We thought 3 years later we must celebrate President Mbeki's birthday, but we had no idea what we need to do. But at that time, Miranda Straydom and Professor Sfiso Ndlovu were working on a project called the Thabo Mbeki I Know, And we used that occasion to launch a book that is called The Thabo Mbeki I Know, which gives a glimpse of this enigma. As many of you will believe wrongly. Or there has been some innovative and creative events that have been organized by Sis Tomato, Gloria Serobe, and her dynamic team at Withhold. And even them, they have to do certain things that, when I look back, it's those contributions that make sure that a foundation like President Mbeki has, which is the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, is sustained. This year was absolutely no different. We started agonizing last year, what are we going to do? And when we met with the young people, because fortunately President Mbeki's birthday is on the Youth Month, and we normally use the issues around young people because we knew he's likely to agree if they propose something because of his affinity towards them. Initially, the young people associated with the foundation proposed that today we must hold a colloquium which is a response to a question that President Mbeki asked them last year. The question is, what is the future of education in the 21st century in Africa? So we've got about 25 young people, each one of them has written a paper on this. And they were supposed to present these papers in a colloquium with President Mbeki, but a few weeks ago, before this fellow came, they started being jittery. They were not sure about the quality of the papers that they have written. They asked for a postponement so that they can rework on their papers. So we moved immediately to Plan B with our colleagues at UNISA. Sis Daisy, Selematile is here. We thought then what we will do today, because we have collected so much of President Mbeki's material. We have spent the last 4 years just collating that material and recording it. Now we are in the process of digitizing it. We have collected more than 500 videos. We thought the time is ripe for us to put together a digital library. And we were of the view that today we will be launching that digital library. And when we spoke to our colleagues at UNISA and we looked at the product that we have come up with, we said, President Mbeki will not be happy with this product. Can you postpone? So Lupi and the gang came and suggested this gimmick. And it has been a very important gimmick, as Motlatse has explained, that today we celebrate President Mbeki's 77th birthday. We're doing a reflection on the 20th anniversary since President Mbeki assumed the office as the chief servant of the peoples of this country and of Africa. More importantly, we need to look at how will that history be recorded and utilized for future generations as they battle with the idea of creating a truly independent Africa that is prosperous, but done through the efforts and ingenuity of its people. An Africa that is at peace with itself and with the rest of the world, whatever the doomsayers want us to believe. Wherefore, we agreed with the young people that today we must give them an opportunity to lead a program of mobilizing resources for the development and the construction of the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library. When the idea of the library was mooted by the original conspirators of this idea, being Mrs. Mbeki, Professor Pityana, and Dr. Maureen Tong here, and they based it on fundamental principles of knowledge, peace, prosperity, and equality, President Mbeki was very quick to say that such a library must never be a vanity project. It must not be a project that only catalogs his contribution, his modest contribution to the genuine cause of Africa, but it must of necessity narrate the journey of Africans as they sought to undo the devastating effects of the results of the Berlin Conference. Therefore, we must trace the work that will be reflected in this library from the Pan-African Congress of 1900. We then put together a number of African scholars and other knowledge workers at UNISA in September 2014 to consider this idea, and we collectively concluded that this is absolutely a necessary project. But it's a project that Africans must take pride in its thinking, in its development, and finally in its operationalization, not only as an academic and research space, but a space of reflection and healing. So whatever it is today, the 77th birthday of President Mbeki gives us another opportunity to reflect on ourselves, our country and our continent, like those that converged at UNISA on that 14th of September. We must declare that if there was time to lead African Renaissance, that time is now. To restore Africa's status and dignity, to reinstate our position as an academic, economic and democratic powerhouse, to rejuvenate our beautiful but battered continent from a long, harsh period of stagnation and strife, to go back to our history, invoking the heroes, heroines, and spirit of our past, using the power of memory to shape humanity, encouraging the spirit of reflection, of thinking and learning, of curiosity, discourse, and debate. Enough of finger pointing, enough of anger, enough of shouting, for we cannot hear each other, but we must hear, we must listen, we must create this space in our hearts, in our minds, on our soil, the space to reflect on the Africa that is, the Africa that was, the Africa that could be, the Africa that passionately pursues the ideal of its renaissance, a space that nurtures culture of reading, of scholarship and participation, that embraces the wisdom of elders, of our poets, our free thinkers, our radical thinkers, a liberating space, a healing space, a living space that is mindful of the sacrifices borne by our ancestors, because a history forgotten is a future lost. Let us build our battered, beloved continent, understanding our differences, our diversity, our vision for unity. Let us move from the state of dis-ease to discourse, from selfishness to solidarity, from fragmentation to freedom, by bringing everything you are, everything you want to be, everything you want us to be, to a space that can hold us all. We ask everyone present in this room to join UNISA that has partnered with us to think this project through and do the necessary preparation so that we can today say, Dr. Selematsele, we are ready to launch a product because we have sufficient content to ask others to throw whatever stones they have to this Isivivane, so that from the collective act, something great and something never seen before may be built. We ask you to join the many young professionals sitting here today that came to us and said, we are not victims of our past. We are a privileged generation because our forebears have created for us an opportunity to build a new country and a new continent. This therefore provides us with an opportunity to provide and demonstrate such an act of appreciation. We think, MEC Hlophe, that a couple of predecessors of yours before, when we approached them and equally excited about the project, I said to Mrs. Mbeki, do you know how to pray? Because we have to pray for these MECs not to be reshuffled. And when they were reshuffled, all of the undertakings that were there disappeared. So I would like to take this challenge from MEC Maile that we sign something tomorrow, Chief. So that whatever shuffling takes place, it doesn't disrupt what we have agreed to today. But it's very important that the government of this province must take the position that MEC Maile was talking about to inspire the rest of this country, but the rest of the continent to do the same. Because if we don't, we continue to face the tragedy of learning about ourselves through the prisms of others. It's a tragedy that the bulk of the history of the liberation movement in the frontline states is today housed in Michigan University and not in any of our universities in the continent and this country. We call on the producers of building industry material to make their own contribution so that this burden, Lopi, can be more bearable. So the calls also go to the construction industry, fully cognizant of its current challenges and difficulties, Doro, to join us on this important task, which is not a vanity project, but an act to reclaim our very being. To this end, President Mbeki, having committed his entire life to the service of humanity, has even agreed that all the material that he has, the works, even the land that he has acquired, not without compensation, and time that he has in his hands, that he will hand over to this project so that all of us can say, can we match him? Therefore, our call tonight is to join him and while still alive, pass a message that say, the struggles that he and his generation and those that came before him was not in vain. I'm sitting here with my Ghanaian friends, and it's amazing that this call, Lupi, has been heard in the United Kingdom by one Peter Mill from Norwich. And this Peter Mill is currently the custodian of President Nkrumah's diaries, writings, unfinished memoirs, and other works of this giant of Africa's Renaissance, whose mother took this material with him when Nkrumah was deposed in 1966, and has been keeping this material in the United Kingdom for more than 52 years. When somebody learned that this material is to be sold or has been sold to the British Library, and the celebration for the handover of the material was to take place on the 7th of June, 2 weeks ago. All of them met wherever they said, but can we speak to President Mbeki before this handover happens? So President Mbeki said, I must write a letter to these people and those that work with President Mbeki. No, so I wrote a letter, my wife is here, spent the letter, the whole night drafting the letter, so I gave it to him. So the following morning, he says, this is the letter, Max, you have done, send it to these people. The letter was totally different from anything I had written the previous day. But it was a thoroughly emotional letter that got to Mr. to Mr. Peter Mill. He immediately responded and said, I'm cancelling the sale to the British Museum. I do not want to be paid a cent, because if this material is handed over to President Mbeki, he will know what to do with it. So colleagues, friends, what we are here about today is a call for action. A call for action to say, as these young people that Lopi came with in my office, we agree that we will ask neither the Chinese nor the illicitly ill-gotten money to build this library. We will do it with our own hands. We will revive the spirit of self-reliance. We will say this is the product of the thinking of Africans. This is the product of the hands of Africans. So with pride, we can hand over something to future generations. So in the end, and hopefully all of you who are here today will join us, and even ask those that are not here with us in building this place that can hold us all. Happy birthday, Chief. May you continue sharing your wisdom and inspire many generations. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
To the most reckless CEO, ladies and gentlemen, Max Kokwani. We had a couple of meetings with the foundation, and my partner in this venture, Piwe Mapanga from the Dynasty Property Group and Nima Holdings, he would say whenever I would inform the team that there's a meeting, he would say, Chief, hey, man. You know, you walk out, it's as though you have just stepped out of a very, 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 very profound masterclass, and it didn't fail to deliver. In fact, each time we would go and talk and try to sell the idea of the library to potential buyers and investors, whom his mandate was very clear. He said he wants young people. Now, majority, not the bulk of young people who are in business, they will obviously buy a table if there's a guarantee that, or at least there's hope of a tender. So you going there and you selling this library, and then it's like, so it hasn't been an easy sell, but through his motivation and through the passion with which he passes on each time we would interact with him, we never felt defeated. And it is with such grace and immense gratitude to the Gauteng Tourism Authority for having not flinched. It just took one letter, and the Gauteng Tourism Authority said, this is something we want to associate with. I know that the sponsors will be thanked, but I just felt it, I feel it opportune that we message us that actually government and government agencies are responsive. The MEC for Sports, Arts and Recreation, I hope I got that one right. Seeing that I have a tendency of forgetting, and seeing that I think senility is slowly creeping in. Mr. Mbeki, you better make sure you do not age. You do not wish, President, you don't wish to get to my age, because when you get to my age, things start going that way. It is a crisis. You then have Travel with Flair, owned by my two beautiful sisters, who are business partners, Basetsana and Joe. Basetsana is the one person that took this and ran with it. I doubt we would have been able to sell the number of bricks that we sold had it not been for enthusiasm and her allowing us to use her powerful social media platform. So her having called on friends. And I remember this one time I was feeling a bit destitute, and I was feeling a bit down, and she said, no, Mdase, we're going to do this thing, and Mdase and Zekile, thank you so much. We've got this band that is playing here, who have also worked extremely hard. We made a call to the producer of the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. It was just one single phone call, and Mantua said, I'm going to speak to Prabita. In fact, I'm going to instruct Prabita that we are definitely getting involved. And that instruction fell through. Prabita, thank you ever so much. Team Music Man. We have Pino Ricard, our new friends. And Pramex Pino Ricard has agreed that they're going to travel the continent with us, as they have dominance within the continent. It is unfortunate, by the time we went to them, it was a bit too late, it was a tad too late, and therefore they couldn't get involved as much as they would have to, but at least they have guaranteed that in them we have an anchor, in them we have an ally, and in them we have a partner. Thank you so much, Bruno Ricard. The sound is sounding great, so I think. As long as I'm sounding good, and I'm loving the sound of my voice here, the monitors are just giving it to me. Exclusive Management Services, black-owned company, ran by young people. They said they will come on board and help us out with the sound. You can see the lighting is beautiful. Well, I know I'm looking beautiful, don't know about you. Black Motion, an interesting story of a young man whom I met in 1999 when I was producing TV shows and doing PR and publicity for Urban Brew Studios. Urban Brew Studios is by far one of the biggest production houses in South Africa. He was just an intern, and he used to come to me and he used to tell me that his dream and his vision one day is to own a production house that specializes in lighting. This is 19 years ago. We've been working together, and I've been roping him in almost everything that I do. 19 years later, you see the production that he did, you see all of this, and it doesn't come that cheap. And he came in at a very good price. We thank you, KG and the team. We don't have many partners and sponsors that joined us, but of course, a big contribution came from the Dynasty Group and Nima Holdings, and to whom Dynasty Group, Mr. Piwe Mapanga is a partner in, and Nima Holdings is a company that just said that they too want to get involved. So a big round of applause to them as well. We're now going to serve dinner. We have made provision for those who are, of course, vegetarian, and those who are not, who prefer special dietary requirements. You will be accommodated. All you have to do is just to inform the waiter that is servicing your table. So we will use this period to just take a break and just to reflect. As I said earlier on, I see that the drinks are not moving in the tables. You are more than welcome to indulge. Schools will postpone for tomorrow. You're not going to school tomorrow, so you're fine. And of course, if whatever we've catered for with grace and humility doesn't satisfy your palate, please feel free to place your orders from your waiters. And of course, you're covering that by yourself. Bon appetit, ladies and gentlemen. the table, appear to the table. We have set aside time for all guests to have an opportunity to take pictures with the principal. Camera guys, hey, Mafia Kaima, One, two. Ladies and gentlemen, could you be so kind and not ambush the patron? Everyone will get a chance to have photographers, cameras, CC. Still have phone, I got.